My father works for FIBA Radio. It's a ministry that broadcasts through the radio. My mother, she has a master's degree in chemistry, so she's kind of qualified to teach. She also has she's done a course in teaching, sort of. Well, my family is from Kerala originally. They're from Kottayam in Kerala. But they moved to Bangalore. My mother moved to Bangalore in '97 when my mother and father got married, and they've been there ever since. I was born in '99. I'm 19 years old right now. Right now, I have 4 siblings. One of them is in college. The other 3 are still in school. 2 of them are being homeschooled right now. One of them is in high school. I'm the first one out of home. I've been doing BDes in IIT Bombay for the last 1 month. It's a 4-year course, so I'll probably be here for 4 years after this. I was homeschooled from the 5th grade to the 11th grade. That's the simple answer. I did take a year off in the middle. I believe after my 10th grade, I took a year off. I was very early. I did my 10th grade very early. I was about 2 years before. So I actually could wait. I could write my exams, but I would not get my certificate until I was, So I was very early in that sense. I did it in 2 batches, all of my exams, so I had a good amount of time to finish that. After that, I took 1 year off, and then started my 11th grade. So I lost 1 year there. So in my 11th grade, I did NIOS. I wanted to do architecture afterward, but my friend who was 1 year senior to me, he was also being homeschooled. He wrote his NIOS 12th exam, and he was very, very smart, very talented in maths and sciences, and he got very poor grades in that. So I was a little worried about that. So I dropped out of NIOS and I joined a state school for 11th and 12th. Till 10th, I was homeschooled. I was homeschooled for 1 year in 11th, but I dropped out after that and redid 11th and 12th grades. Okay, there are several factors. My father wanted to do it because he knew his cousin was homeschooling his children, and he knew that they were able to learn in a much more organic way. The primary reason he wanted to do homeschooling, though, was that he wanted to teach us the Bible. He wanted to make sure that we were well grounded in the things that matter, rather than academics. Instead of spending a whole day under a teacher who may or may not share the same views as he wants us to learn. So he spent about an hour every day for the last 10 years. He's been doing it, I guess, to teach us the Bible. So that was his primary motive. But secondarily, also the aspect of education, and we can learn in a much more organic fashion at our own pace. We can learn what we want, what we believe is important. There are several factors, but that is primarily it. In the beginning, my mother was very scared because this is completely foreign to her. Both of her parents are teachers, and both of my father's parents are teachers. So we had a full house, and there was a lot of pressure from the family because you're taking your children out of school. How can you do that? So we did have a lot of pressure. My mother was very terrified at the beginning, so she went into override in the first month to make sure we stay ahead of the school, and we finished the first year in the first month. So after that, she realized that we could take things a little slower. So the first month we studied in the morning and the afternoon, but after that our day started early because Dad had to go to work, and before that he would teach us the Bible. So we would wake up around 6:30 and we would study till around 7:30, maybe 7:45 sometimes. But after the first month, it became a lot more relaxed. We would study very rarely after lunch. So most of the time study stopped at lunch, yeah, and we would just go out and explore for the rest of the day. In the later grades, like 8th and ninth, what we would do is we preferred studying in the evening because our friends would. So until then, the reason we would not study in the afternoons and evenings were our friends with school would come back from school at that time, so we would be able to go out and play with them. But after that, in 10th and from 8th to 10th, they would go for tuitions, and so what we basically did is we would study maybe at we would start 11. We would basically go back to sleep after dad left and wake up around 11 and then start our day then. Yeah, so that was a much more relaxed thing. We had a lot of freedom in the way we organized our studies. We had a weekly amount of studies that we had to finish. So we could go at our own pace. Our parents gave us a little freedom there, but we had to finish it in the week. In the week, there is this much work that you need to finish, and you have to finish that. So they held us accountable for the time that we spent, of course, but we had a lot of freedom. We had a schedule in the beginning, and even for a couple of years after that, we had a sort of timetable. But what we found is that we would usually finish the work much faster than the timetable allowed. So we were able to spend a lot of time after, even when the timetable isn't over, we were doing things that were not in the timetable. Yeah, so timetable worked for a while. We stopped using it because it didn't make sense after a point, because we would just, any timetable we fixed, we would just break it. We had like I said, a weekly schedule, right? So we need to finish a chapter, or we need to finish 2 chapters in this much time. It was not. It was independent in the sense that we could time ourselves and pace ourselves however we wanted, but the work needs to get done. My parents were very strict about that. If there's work to be done, it has to be done, right? So yes, we did have freedom in our own personal times when we want to study. We picked and chose the books that we wanted to study. My parents, even though they're both science majors, they didn't really want us to be fixed to one path. They had a general idea, in their heart, and we could see that later on, that they wanted, for example, they wanted me to take up a science role, something in the scientific field. But they never imposed that on us at an early age. They stressed on 2 things: English as in every form, public speaking, writing, reading, everything. We had to be very proficient, and mathematics. So they made sure that we studied those things the best we could. So we chose the Indian, the NCERT books, I believe, for maths. A few books we did take from Iype for arithmetic. That's very early. And for pre-algebra from Bob Jones University, we had 1 book. But other than that, it was entirely NCERT for mathematics. For English, we followed 2 books primarily. One was the American, the Iype series for grammar and writing. For public speaking, we had someone teaching us. It was a very short course, it wasn't very long, but it was very well done and from a very organized point of view. But we also followed the Wren and Martin series for English spelling and English grammar. We had a very comprehensive study of English. Languages not so much, but English, yes, very much. Everything else was secondary to them. Of course, they did ask us to learn geography, they did ask us to learn history and science, but it was more of, in the beginning, they asked us to study everything, but after that it was, so you study these 2 things, and the rest of the things you study by yourself. We will help you with mathematics, we will help you with English, but everything else you study by yourself, because we're teaching you English so that you can read and comprehend something without help, right? You should be able to read a passage and understand. So I took up all the sciences and history and geography. My sister, she was much more into history and civics and economics, but we were given a little freedom there to choose the things that we wanted. In the beginning, they wanted us to have some kind of grounding in scientific principles, so they asked us to study physics and chemistry a little bit, but after a certain point, it was do what you think you want to do afterwards. Get a good grounding in that so that you'll be able to step into that easily. So no, not a real fixed curriculum. We chose the books that we thought were the best for the particular subject we wanted to learn, but it was not really fixed. We chose, it's very eclectic. Other resources. We did use Khan Academy for mathematics. It's the best by far. There's no comparison with Khan Academy. There are a lot of resources on YouTube for history. It's very hard to study history from an unbiased point of view. So we were encouraged to read a lot. One of the things my father encouraged us to do when we were learning history was read actual historians. So we would go and the works of Josephus, the Greek historians. We would read their accounts, the translated works, rather than just read what is in a textbook. Of course, we did read that. We did read the textbooks themselves. We did go on the internet and read up sources. But we had my father was very concerned about accuracy and unbiased sources. So he did ask us to do that. Other sources. For music, we studied from Hoffman Academy. It's a source for piano. We did have other books that were not strictly academic books, but yeah, if you're looking at it from an education point of view, we largely use these resources. But we had other things that we learned as well on the way. My father taught us plumbing, carpentry, and wiring, things like that. That was much more from people who knew how to do it. We would go to them and we would learn from them, which was much more, I feel, organic than studying from a book or a resource. So that was the primary way we used to learn those things. A lot of it was done through exploration by ourselves. They would encourage us to go out, find things, observe things. They got us a microscope very early on so we could find things and come back and look at things we wanted to. They encouraged us to use online resources like Wikipedia to research ourselves. They've taught us how to look for sources, make sure that what we're reading is accurate. So we were given a free rein on learning what we wanted to, so we had a lot of resources. They encouraged us to use libraries, so we used extremely wide range of resources. But for education, primarily it was the textbooks, Khan Academy, and a few other resources online. In the beginning, it was jumping into a cold pond, right? It's a completely new atmosphere. You're not learning with anyone. You don't have anyone for a reference point, as in I should be here at this particular time. We didn't have testing. Again, that was weird because we didn't know what we were learning for. There's no end point here to study towards. It was difficult when we in the beginning with our friends because we made all these friends in school and suddenly we have no access. That was hard in the beginning. Another challenge was, like I said, finding a reference point of where you should be at this particular time. But it wasn't. While we felt it hard, it wasn't really a problem because most of the time we were quite a bit ahead of the curve. So yeah, finding resources was a little difficult. You can't get those books here. We had to get them in the US and ask someone to bring them. We were lucky that in a couple of places we got second-hand books, and we were pretty okay there. I can't think of many challenges actually. It was much easier than it would have been if we were in school actually, because there were quite a few instances in our journey that would have been impossible if we were in school. So I can't think of anything that really that counts as a challenge so much, but it's not many challenges. In the beginning, my mom would quiz us not really so much a formal written test, but you would quiz us. We had exercises in the textbooks that we would have to do. Um, we didn't really study for tests. Like that concept never occurred to us because we were learning things. We were not learning for tests. Writing tests is an art in itself, right? Because if you go to school, that's something you automatically learn because everything is tested. But we never learned that. So in the about ninth grade, I believe, we started testing. But even that was very informal, and it didn't. I mean, now my sister hasn't done any tests in ninth. She's in 10th now. It was hard for us, especially after the jump from 9th to 10th was very difficult because it's a different way of learning. Now it's a much more structured, much more restrictive form of learning. But it is okay. I mean, that's what we were going for this entire time, getting into a new situation, being able to adapt very quickly. We were able to adapt, I think. Yeah, we did decently well. We could have done better, I feel, if we had a little bit more exposure to tests from an early grade, but I don't think it was important at all. The grades that we get in 10th don't matter at all. So we, while it was difficult, testing was difficult afterwards, it was not something that stopped us from anything. So it's not something that mattered. I felt left out when my friends would go on overnight trips to places. I felt left out when they had projects that they would all go together to do. I felt left out when they had a school trip. But I feel like I did all those things and much better than they did, and for much longer periods than they did, and with much fewer restrictions than they had. So maybe at the time, think about company. Your friends are going out, so you want to go out. Yeah, I did feel left out there, but even right then, I knew it wasn't important. Now to be that important, and now I know it's not important at all, because the feeling is there when you see everyone going. But no, our parents taught us well. we knew what was important. Right? We didn't have too much structure except for music. Music we would go to a school to learn. I learned the violin. My sister learned the piano. So. Music we had a little bit of structure, but everything else was anything that interested us. We never thought of it as extracurricular because even curriculums were so, unstructured to us. We were learning because we wanted to learn, and we were doing these things because we wanted to do them. I took up drawing. I took up microbiology. It's not an extracurricular. It was a hobby for me, though. I would go out and collect specimens, make slides. I took up painting. I took up a little bit of sculpture. Reading was a very big hobby. I don't know if you call it a hobby if everyone does it, but reading, even writing, creative writing, poetry. My parents, like I said, they're very scientific. They're not very much creatively inclined. They love structure, but they gave us a free rein to do these things. So we had one of our friends had a huge library, and we would always go and borrow books from them. We would visit bookstores and spend whole days there. In Bangalore, we have very good bookstores, so we would spend a lot of time in bookstores. We had places where we would go just to write poetry and stuff. Drawing and painting I learned by myself. Microbiology. I told you I got a microscope very early, so I used it. Plumbing and carpentry my father taught us. That was in Kerala. We have a farm there, so all the work that needs to be done there, we do it ourselves. So that's where I learned all of that. We also learned paper making. We learned methods of marbling paper. There was very many small things that we did, a lot of them, which I don't know if you're talking about extracurriculars that we did systematically, that we did for a long period of time. We chose one or two and we would stick at that. My sister, she would do a bit of sculpture and a bit of craft. I did drawing painting and writing. My brother, for example, he's very much into electronics. He makes gadgets and wires things up. My sister, again, she's into writing, creative writing. My fourth one is into creative writing, and the youngest is into acting. Homeschooling prepared me. See, when we were learning, we weren't, like I said, we weren't learning to pass a test. We were learning because we wanted to know the thing. We wanted to understand it. We wanted to keep it in our heads. It wasn't to, okay, there's this quiz that we need to pass, so learn everything. No, it was much more, here's this really cool thing. You should probably know more about it. So we tackle things from an understanding point of view much more than a study for a test point of view. So academically now, I understand concepts from the root. I prefer to study things from the root, and that really frustrated a lot of my teachers when I went to school, because I would keep asking questions. I would ask them if I didn't understand something. I would ask questions till I understood it, rather than study the surface, and that, because that's all you need to write a test. So my teachers got a little frustrated with me, but I feel like that is a much more reasonable way of studying, I feel, because otherwise you just study. Once you pass the test, you forget everything, right? So right now, the course that I'm doing right now does not require much academic skill. It's much more creative in its scope. But while I was in 12th, when I joined school again, I could go very fast, because that was what I was trained to. I was trained to understand things, and we didn't have very good teachers in the state school that we went to. So they themselves were not very good at teaching. They were just fresh out of college graduate usually. But I was able to keep up, and I was able to maintain a good grade throughout, because I knew how to study from the root, rather than just study the surface, which these teachers did not explain very well. So yeah, I feel that it prepared me very well. Non-academically, well, I feel this is actually, what I just described is applicable non-academically as well. If you see a new situation, you tackle it from the root, you understand it, and then you go ahead. We learnt the scripture very well, so to go to a new situation, to be able to see it from a biblical point of view is very useful. To be able to understand people, to be able to communicate with them. Public speaking helped a lot with that. Well, yeah, I guess so. And even socializing with people, because we had no one of our own age group. If we were homeschooled. When I say own age group, I don't mean. Of course, we had our immediate younger brothers and immediate older sisters, but not many of the same age group, right? So we were forced to socialize with those older than us and younger to us. So that helped us a lot. Even in church, while people used to make groups of the same age, we knew everyone, because we would talk to everyone. So that really helped us to open up to people, and to get people to open up to us. I noticed that in all of my siblings, we're very, very open to people, and we can communicate very easily to others. Yeah. I didn't know that this is what I was going to do at all. I was preparing for architecture because I love design, but since my parents are from a sciencey background, there was a pressure. It was never explicit, it was never put out in words, but there was an expectation that I would take something engineering or science related. So I chose to take something as close to the middle as I could, and I went with architecture. I began preparing for architecture in the middle of my 12th grade. There's an exam called the NATA, National Aptitude Test for Architecture. I was preparing for that. And by chance, my mother heard about a design exam called the UCED, Undergraduate Common Entrance Exam for Design, and she told me to sign up. I wasn't very keen on that because I had spent 6 months already studying for NATA, and by this time the workload was piling up for the 12th exams. So it was a very stressful period. I signed up because she told me to for the exam. I didn't go for any coaching for it. I didn't even study for it actually. At the week before the exam, my mom told me, your exam is the next week. The entrance exam is the next week. And I said, oh yeah. But I really did, even at that point, I didn't put much thought to it because that was not my aim. I was aiming at something else. The day before the exam, she told me again, your exam is tomorrow. And I said, okay, I'll look at last year's paper just to get a overview of what the exam is like. Spoilers, it wasn't anything like last year's paper. The paper changes wildly every single time because it's set by a different college every time. So I looked through that and I went through it quickly once. That's it. And my father was not in town at this time during the exam. The exam center was 4 hours away. The exam started at 8. So I had to wake up at 4 in the morning and catch a cab. And I really didn't want to go. My mom pushed me out of the door. So I got there. I wrote the exam. The first feeling that I got that I might have done pretty well was as I walked out, people were saying, did you finish 2 or 3 sections? There were 4 sections in the exam. So I finished everything. I finished 40 minutes early actually. I was not at all focused on this exam at all. I just wrote it because we spent money, we registered for it, might as well write it now. And I went and did my practicals. And about a month later, and I found out after I found my results that people were following the release of these answer keys very closely. They were tracking all the scores. People were collaborating all of the marks and ranking themselves before the rank list came out, and everyone was wrong. Like the scores were nowhere near what they projected. The day the results came out in the evening, my mom said, your results are out. And I was like, okay. So I went out that day. I wasn't at all interested because I didn't study at all for the exam. I didn't expect anywhere in the top 1,000. I didn't expect a rank there. So, I just went out. I played some basketball, came back, and my mom said, you check your score. Because she was really, she had a very good feeling about it. And I checked it, and I couldn't believe my rank was in the correct row. I thought that might be a category or something. So I said, I'm the 10th rank. They were surprised. I was very, very surprised. Interestingly, after the results came out, I could relax for my 12th exams. Till then, I was under extreme stress because after my 10th results came out, I didn't do as well as I projected my 10th because I think you guys are familiar with the TMAs in NIOS. Okay, so in 10th, 20% of your marks are given to tutor marked assignments. So the school which I went to, they didn't upload my marks for science. I got straight A's in all of them. They didn't upload my marks. And I didn't do extremely well. I got around 80% of the score of the exam. So I was in the 60s exam, and I was expecting 85 at least. And I was very, very upset because and I went into something like depression for 2 weeks. I was very, very I was very affected by that because until then that was actually a very good blow to my pride. Because until then I felt like I can do anything. I'm very smart. But no, that was a very, very good blow to my pride, I feel. So I was scared when I came to my 12th. That was in the back of my head, working all the way up to that and getting nothing. But after this result came out, I was very relaxed. I could write with clear mind. I did better than I expected, even in the 12th, I guess.
So you didn't appear for your architecture?
I didn't appear for it because even if I did appear for it, the college that I would get into, the course that I would get, was not as good as this course. It wasn't in my plan at all to appear for this exam, which I did appear for, because I thought there was no way I would get it, but I did. So I just didn't appear for the other exams. Yeah. Very open at home. We were encouraged to talk to our parents about anything. Um, Again, like I said, the daily grounding in the Word. We knew the Bible inside out by the time I left. Uh, we have a very, very strong foundation on the Bible. They taught us how to make decisions. They taught us, how to keep our priorities straight. They taught us how to interact with other people based on the Bible. They taught us values. They taught us, what is important, what we should focus on. And I think that covers everything. Academics are not very important. They are important to your life afterwards, especially the secular fields. But much more important, I feel, is the ability to think. Encourage that in children. Encourage the ability to reason, to look at the situation, figure out what is going on, figure out causes, be able to think logically, to reason, to communicate. These are the important things. These are the things that you would use in life if you want to teach. Sure, social sciences, physics, and chemistry are all important, but living is much more important, I feel, and that's much more relevant to our lives. Skills are important, but if my advice is to Christian homeschooling parents, it would be just make sure that they know God, because that is the most important thing. There is nothing more important than that. Make sure that they have a personal relationship with God, that they can see Him personally, and that you should be an example to them in how a godly person is. I feel that is much more important than what you can teach them.